What should we expect from Bryce Young and the rest of the 2023 draft class this year? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And make sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. Why? Because on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So either at me or DM me to get those questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I hope everybody enjoyed their holiday weekend. I certainly did, getting away from the pod for a couple of days. And by the way, quick programming note, as I told you, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that will not be the case for the next 6 weeks. Starting next week at the beginning of June, we'll be to 3 days a week off-season mode. You're going to get them. I don't know when you're going to get them because I'm not always going to do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday because I don't record on Sundays when the off-season's happening, but you'll have an idea when the shows come out. So make sure to subscribe and follow the show for free to get all those episodes once we start next week with off-season mode. But on today's show, let's look back at last year's draft class, headlined by the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, and the rest of them, and see what their expectations should be heading into year 2. As we know, this is a massive year 2 for Bryce Young. What does it mean for Jonathan Mingo, DJ Johnson, and the rest of the 2023 draft class? All that coming up right here on Locked On Panthers. Let's go ahead and start off with number 1 overall pick in the 2023 draft, the most polarizing player on the Panthers roster, as there are fans who believe that Bryce Young can show us what he showed at Alabama and in that Packers game last year. And there are still people who believe the Panthers made the wrong decision by not taking CJ Stroud, and that Bryce Young can never play at that level in the NFL, and he might not be able to play well at all. And there's people who are in between. There's all sorts of sides to the Bryce Young conversation here in Carolina. For me, last year, admittedly, was rough for a myriad of reasons that we have gone over so many times on the show. So let's go over it again. The stats last year, they were poor. 2,877 yards passing. That's actually not that bad. 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. There was a handful of fumbles in that when it came to turnovers as well. Only completed 59.8% of his passes last season. Not good enough. But we understand, did not have protection, did not have receivers who could get open and catch the ball, then do something with it, which then leads to Bryce Young taking a franchise record-tying 62 sacks. Now, sacks are not always on the offensive line. They're on the quarterback as well. I think about the game against the Saints where just throw the ball away right before halftime, a chance to get points on the board. Bryce doesn't do it, gets a strip sack. That's on him. There were situations where that was the case. There are also situations where, what are you doing? With all the offensive linemen, the constant turnstiles you have there at left guard and at right guard, Ike Kwanu not playing well this past season. A lot of reasons why Bryce Young was sacked as many times as he was last year, and they're not all on the offensive line, and they're not all on Bryce Young, a combination really of both. The sack percentage, by the way, was 10.5% of the times that he was sacked on his dropbacks. That was just barely worse than Steve Berline, who originally set the franchise record back in 2000. He had a 10.4% sack percentage. And you look at Steve Berline's career, his sack percentage was pretty high up there throughout his tenure in the NFL, especially his time in Carolina. Looking at Pro Football Focus, Bryce Young's overall offensive grade was a 56.0. That was good for 35th out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks last year in the NFL. His pass grade was 35th out of 37 qualifying quarterbacks. His run grade was a 78.1. He had 259 scramble yards. And needed considering the lack of protection. He was able to keep things going. And that is one of the bright spots thinking ahead, that Bryce Young can utilize his legs, keep plays going, and that may be able to mitigate some of the issues that they could have in the offensive line moving forward. And hopefully adding more players is going to mitigate those issues. But it's good to know that you have a quarterback who can do something off script, which is what he did at Alabama, was a big reason why he was taken number 1 overall by Frank Reich and Scott Fitter in this past regime, and really the owner, David Tepper, who's still here. Bryce Young, I still think has something, but the numbers, again, they were tough. League worst, 73.7 passer rating. His QBR was at 33.4. That was 30th in the league, only better than Will Levis and Zach Wilson. Levis going to start again in Tennessee. Zach Wilson, he has been banished to the frontier to play with the Denver Broncos, maybe not even play at all. Last in net yards per pass attempt at 4.07. Last in passing success rate. Second worst in touchdown percentage on attempts, only ahead of Kenny Pickett, who wanted out of Pittsburgh to go never play in Philadelphia. It was rough for Bryce. But again, the O-line was banged up, was terrible, had no run game. And outside of Adam Thielen, he got no receiving help for the most part. DJ Chark did have his moments in the games last season, like against Green Bay, like against Atlanta. Then we saw what he did against Jacksonville, and then later on in week 18 against Tampa Bay, and understand why he's no longer here in Carolina. So the verdict as far as Bryce Young, my expectations for him this upcoming season is the fact that they've added talent and depth on the offensive line. When you bring in Damian Lewis, you're bringing Robert Hunt, you bring in Josh Nyman, you relegate guys like Brady Christensen and Cade Mays and Chandler Zavala as depth pieces who have experience starting and playing, some of them at a decent level on the offensive line. That's going to help you with the front end talent, and also the fact that if somebody goes down, you have someone who can step in there and that can elevate Bryce Young. Also, when you add talent out wide, like Deontay Johnson, like Xavier Leggett, and you bring in a pass-catching tight end, Jatavion Sanders, this should be a better offense. They should, at the very least, be able to run the football, which takes pressure off of Bryce Young, allows him to go play action, assuming that Dave Canales is going to have him under center, something that Thomas Brown and Frank Reich did not want to do last year. There's more possibilities for this Panthers offense because of the additions, and there's more possibilities for Bryce Young to look more like the guy that we saw against Green Bay more often than not than last year, when quite simply he didn't have the protection and did not have the weapons on the outside to help him, and he had to try to carry the team as a rookie, and that's never a good formula. So Bryce Young should be better. The question is, how much better? We'll find out. Jonathan Mingo was taken in the second round, 39th overall. And once he came in, it was very clear that the returning wide receivers, Laviska Shenault, Shi Smith, and Terrace Marshall Jr. were not highly favored by Frank Reich and the all-star coaching staff that I and you and everyone dubbed that the Panthers had last year when they were trying to figure out who their quarterback was going to be. Mingo came in and seemingly was handed the wide receiver 3 position. I don't know how much he earned it, but when you think about the other guys that were there, Shi Smith, who had won the job out of camp the year prior, turned out he really wasn't that true wide receiver 3. Look at Laviska Shenault. I know fans believe that maybe he could be like that off-brand Deebo Samuel. No, that did not work out at all in Carolina. And then Terrace Marshall Jr. didn't really get an opportunity, which is unfortunate because he did show some promise in the second half of that season when Steve Wilkes took over as the interim head coach and he was the number 2 wide receiver. He never got an opportunity. So Mingo stepped in, only put up 43 receptions, 418 yards, and a goose egg when it came to touchdowns. He had the 5th worst catch percentage in the NFL last season, a 50.59. Yikes. 54.7 PFF grade. That was 110th out of 128 qualifying wide receivers. 52.6 receiving grade, 116th out of 126 qualifying wide receivers. A terrible rookie year, especially when you watch guys like Jaden Reed go to the Packers and play really well. You see Rashee Rice was able to do for Kansas City last season, and Puka Nacua, who was taken in the 5th round, and he was the best of all the rookie wide receivers last year in the NFL. It is a tough pill to swallow for Panther fans to watch yet another second-round draft pick at wide receiver just not live up to whatever hype there would have been, whatever expectations you may have had, but especially the coaching staff had. The coaching staff believed in him so much that he was going to come in immediately and be that 3rd wide receiver, and he got all those reps, got all those snaps, and did not produce. Could not get open. When he did get open, couldn't catch the football. It's tough. And Bryce Young also missed Mingo on a couple of throws. I think back to at the Superdome in New Orleans, wide open for a touchdown. Missed in week 1 against Atlanta as well. That has to be fixed. And I heard during OTAs last week, right before the holiday, that Bryce Young, Jonathan Mingo, there was a little bit of connection there. We'll see what it's going to look like. My main question for him moving forward is, what's his role going to be now that Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson have joined the Panthers? Dave Canales already come out and said publicly that, Deontay Johnson, we brought you in to be our X, to be the first read, to be our playmaker. And that makes sense. The guy has been an all-pro as a returner. He's been a Pro Bowler as a receiver. The last time he had any sort of decent quarterback play, which was Ben Roethlisberger's corpse, he played really well and went to the Pro Bowl. The last 2 seasons with Mitch Trubisky, who I love but embarrasses me every single Sunday as being a North Carolina fan, he was bad. Kenny Pickett was worse. It's hard to have success. And of course, you can be frustrated. Both Bryce Young getting more time, having a run game, there's more options there. Deontay Johnson in a featured role, I think he'll be happy. I think he'll play well. Xavier Legette, we'll see what he's able to do. But it feels like those two plus Adam Thielen are your top 3 wide receivers. So as far as heading into 2024, my expectations for Jonathan Mingo is to be wide receiver 4. And really the hope is that he can carve out a consistent role enough to where he can see the football. Maybe won't put up the same numbers put up last year. We'll see whether that's the case or not, but maybe just as far as getting less opportunities, maybe he can do more with it, score some touchdowns. If he can just show any sort of ability, any sort of promise that he could be at the very least, a solid wide receiver 3 option next season and the final season after that in his rookie deal, that is a positive. Looking at the roster with Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen, there's some serious questions of whether they'll be back in 2025. So you need someone like Mingo, and of course, Legette as well, to step up, show that they can be the guys that Bryce can lean on moving forward, as this still is a rebuild. And you have an aging veteran and another player who's going to enter free agency next year. And if he has a big year, may not be someone you're able to keep. We will see. But at the very least, Mingo has to show that he can be a wide receiver 3 and a better one than he showed as a rookie. Show separation, be able to catch the football, do something with it, score a touchdown, just develop. And with the coaching staff around, of a big wide receiver background among the offensive coaches, he has an opportunity. And it's not going to be as big an opportunity he got last year, but he still has an opportunity, unlike some of the other guys coming back here to Carolina. So those are my expectations heading into 2024 for Bryce Young and Jonathan Mingo. What about DJ Johnson and Chandler Zavala? We saw them last year, and they left all of us wanting more. Will that be the case in 2024, or will we see them take a step forward in the right direction? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And I know Boston's already in the finals. We'll find out later tonight here on Tuesday whether they'll be joined by the Dallas Mavericks, or will Minnesota be able to extend it another game. Either way, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, which truly is an amazing feature that Game Time has. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Heading into the 2023 NFL Draft, one of the needs the Panthers had was getting an edge rusher. We saw what Brian Burns was able to do, being a Pro Bowler for 2 straight seasons, and you also saw Marquise Haynes have some moments, but the Panthers need to try and find someone who maybe down the line could be a replacement to Hassan Reddick, who they let leave in free agency the year prior. So the Panthers decided that they were going to trade up from 93 to 80 with Pittsburgh and take DJ Johnson out of Oregon. DJ Johnson, who started off his career in college as a tight end, then was all Pac-12 honorable mention as an edge rusher, 24 years old, going to turn 25 as a rookie, as a project. And I hated the pick. We all know I hated the pick, and a lot of y'all also were very skeptical of why they would get a player that old with that little experience at that position and bring him here to Carolina to potentially be a starter down the road. Well, we were all justified in feeling that way based off of what the results were last season for DJ Johnson. He played in 13 games, making 3 starts, mainly because of injury, logged 29% of defensive snaps that were available to him last season. He had 16 combined tackles, 1 tackles for loss, and 0 sacks at the age of 25. Pretty brutal. Looking at Pro Football Reference, he blitzed 12 times last year. He was able to record, 1 pressure. PFF had him logged with 83 pass rush snaps with 3 hurries and 3 pressures. So Pro Football Reference, Pro Football Focus, they oftentimes have conflicting stats. Either way, you look at the pass rush snaps, you look at the hurries, the pressures. It was minuscule. He did not really give much in that department as a rookie, which is not to say he can't do it moving forward, because this is a guy, and a lot of fans, rightfully so, were on Scott Fitterer for a lot of the trades that he made and also the draft. And we went over back in January why Scott Fitterer was no longer the Carolina Panthers general manager, and he did not draft well. And we're kind of illustrating that today when looking at the 2023 draft class and expectations for them heading into 2024. Johnson wasn't great, but it's not like it was just Scott's decision. Ejiro Evero was somebody, the Panthers defensive coordinator, who really wanted DJ Johnson, saw something in him, and did not get a lot out of him last year. Now, this season, he's going to get another opportunity to really show something for the Panthers. Jadeveon Clowney, he is clearly going to be the top option, and he's going to be a guy who I think will see some double teams this year. Maybe that opens up the possibilities for DJ Woonem, who I told y'all last week from conversations I had is somebody who may not be available right as training camp begins. And what is that going to mean for him heading into the season? We've seen in years past that hasn't been great for Carolina when they've had players coming off of a significant injury like Woonem is, but hopefully he'll be able to buck that trend and come in and play well. But those are the 2 projected starters, Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Woonem. And behind them, it's DJ Johnson. And finding out that Amari Barno tore his ACL and that he may not even make the roster now because of that. And if he does make the roster, he's going to start off the year on PUP at the best case scenario for him, really. And then will he be able to contribute anything after that? I don't know. But K'Lavon Chaisson, he comes over after so far being a bust after getting drafted in the first round by Jacksonville. You have guys like Eku Leota who are still around, who might get an opportunity. But really, it's Clowney, it's Woonem, it's Johnson. And to start things out, I believe when camp comes around, it's going to be Clowney, it's going to be DJ Johnson. So DJ Johnson has an opportunity to really show that he can be more than what he gave last year. And I think the important thing, too, for a guy like him, as I talk about having grace with Bryce Young, and I got to do the same thing with guys like Jonathan Mingo, who I may not be a big believer in. In the same case with DJ Johnson, who's now going to be in his second year in an NFL defense with the same coaching staff. And it's so important for a guy like that. For Bryce Young, I hate that he has another offense, another coaching staff. My hope is that this one sticks. And if it doesn't, he probably won't be around to see another coaching staff, if we're being honest with ourselves. So this is going to be it for Bryce as far as Dave Canales. They're going to be tied together, in my opinion. DJ Johnson, he's fortunate enough to be able to see the same coaching staff, be able to get the same concepts and understand, and have another year of experience, another offseason in that system, and get a guy like Clowney, who may not have been out there for OTAs last week. We'll see if he's out there this week. But to have a guy like that to be able to usher him along, and DJ Woonem as well, and even K'Lavon Chaisson, who's been in the league, that is a good situation for him. Right now, he's basically your fill-in starter until Woonem's available, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities. Get after the passer. Just will he be able to get home this year and provide more than he provided last year? We will see. I don't know whether I feel confident about that, but I am very confident that he is going to see a lot of snaps this year and get a lot of opportunities. Just what do you do with them? Chandler Zavala, he is a guy looking at last year. Clearly, he was not ready to play, and it's not his fault. He started off the year on PUP when he got to training camp, and it kind of is insane to look back to that and remember how there was expectation that he was going to compete at left guard with Brady Christensen. And I understand that he and Ike Ekwonu played a grand total of 5 games at NC State, and they were friends and all of that. But we saw that Brady Christensen, even when he was the lowest graded offensive lineman on that 2022 offensive line, he was a solid starter for the Panthers, maybe like replacement level, but good enough. But Chandler Zavala was a complete liability for the Panthers last year. And again, Not his fault. He wasn't supposed to play that early. Maybe he would have came and competed if he was healthy, but he wasn't. And we saw what he put out there, that he probably wasn't going to be someone that was going to win that job anyways. But not having Christensen, not having Corbett, Calvin Throckmorton coming in, not playing all well, Cade Mays struggling at the beginning of the season, that puts Zavala in a situation where he had to play, and that he had missed some pretty vital portions of the offseason. And what that led to was him playing 10 games, making 7 starts, allowing 6 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, and 33 pressures, having a 26.2 overall PFF grade and a 7.1 pass blocking grade, including a 0.0 in the road loss in week 3 at Seattle. Just wasn't ready to play, clearly. And I'm not going to sit here and say that this guy can never play at this level. Just last season, you have to remember he started off as a JUCO player, who then went to NC State, and that offensive line, outside of Ike Ekwonu, and if anyone watches State football, like, they have not been able to run the football. They've had guys like Bam Knight who have been there as running backs recently in person, and they couldn't run the ball. Makes absolutely no sense for a team that is based on physicality at the line of scrimmage, that they had not been able to run the football unless they had like a guy like Ike Ekwonu. Well, Zavala wasn't really the case. So you got to understand, it's still taking some time for him to get used to this level. I look at him more as a developmental player still, and I do wonder what his long-term prognosis here in Carolina is with the addition of Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. Those are clearly your starting guards. Brady Christensen, who's considered the backup center right now. And you look at the roster, Andrew Rahm is the only other technical center that they have here, but Brady's been getting opportunities there. Brady could play tackle as well. Wouldn't be the first guy as Josh Steinman's brought in to be a swing tackle. I would think that if anything happens, God forbid the Hunt or Lewis, Brady Christensen gets the first opportunity. And then after that, it's Cade Mays, and it's probably then Chandler Zavala. He's a developmental player, and that should be the focus. And the hope is that he can be a quality depth piece who has played, because you needed him, but this is a break glass in case of emergency player heading into 2024. Like, you hopefully never see Chandler Zavala in 2024. Now, down the road, you still don't really want to see him, but if you have to see him, it's because he's coming in to be an extra offensive lineman, not to be a starter, as you're hoping that Hunt and Lewis are 2 guys that hit here in Carolina. So there's Chandler, there's DJ, there's one more to talk about, and that's Jamie Robinson, a guy who, quite honestly, I forgot was on the roster last year. So will I remember he's on the roster this year? We'll see. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And looking at FanDuel right now here on Tuesday evening, we got Minnesota, Dallas, Game 4 in Dallas. The Mavericks are -1.5 to close it out, -118 money line. And if they win, $150 in bonus bets. Are you feeling Luka and Kyrie? I kind of am. I don't know. We'll see. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We know that in 2024, Bryce Young will once again be the Panthers starting quarterback, and unless he has an injury, he's going to be, of course, knock on wood, he will be the guy for Carolina. Jonathan Mingo, looking at him right now, wide receiver 4, will be on the roster. I just don't know how much he's going to really get to provide, but the hope is that he can show that he can be someone worth keeping around in the years to come, as the Panthers will, in my opinion, be in the hunt for wide receivers again next offseason, just based off the age and contract status of some other guys. DJ Johnson did nothing last year. Brian Burns is gone. Etor Gross-Panos is gone. DJ Woonem, he's got some injury concerns heading into training camp once we get there in July, and that's not fortunate for the Panthers, but it's fortunate they have DJ Johnson, who was already in the scheme last year, and someone who the defensive coordinator really wanted to bring to Carolina. And Chandler Zavala, bless his heart, a guy who just needs to just develop behind the scenes, and let's never see him play this season, because if that happens, well, the Panthers have already blown somebody out, or things have gone terribly wrong yet again. Jamie Robinson. Okay, cool, man. You're still here. I really, truly, totally forgot he was on the roster so many times last year, and this is stunning to me. He played in 15 games, made 2 starts. I don't know when that was, and recorded 17 tackles. He only played 64 defensive snaps, so I don't really understand how he made 2 starts. He played 70% of the special team snaps last year, and being a 5th-round guy like he was, that really should be the expectation when you bring in Von Bell to be a starting safety, and when you have Xavier Woods, you weren't going to play Jamie Robinson a ton. Now, the concerning thing was when you saw injuries to Von Bell and to Xavier Woods, it wasn't Jamie Robinson who was getting those opportunities. It was Sam Franklin, which would make sense as he had been a veteran, been primarily a special teams ace, and he's still here in Carolina. And then after he kind of struggled, it was Alex Cook, who they signed off a practice squad and then brought to Carolina to play over a guy they had just drafted. So I'm wondering how he's going to get on the field this year when the Panthers have Xavier Woods still here. They brought in Nick Scott and Jordan Fuller. Fuller should start at safety, and Scott started last year in Cincinnati, and both those guys have an understanding of this scheme that Ejiro Evero runs. And not to mention, Sam Franklin Jr. is back, and so is Alex Cook, who played over Jamie Robinson last year. Special teams is important. That's the best way to make the roster for guys like Robinson, who seem to be kind of fringe roster guys. New general manager, understand that Dan Morgan was here before, and that's kind of led to a lot of guys that still stick around, but you've seen some changes that the Panthers have made, of course, this offseason. This one has got me miffed. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect other than he's probably not going to get that many snaps again. He's going to really have to compete. So we'll get down to training camp and really find out what kind of role Jamie Robinson is going to play next year. But a little concerning. It's 5th-round pick, and we know the history of Panthers with those 5th-round picks not really hitting. But the one that they brought in this year, Cha Smith-Wade, a lot of us are expecting him to get out there on the field and maybe even take over starting role as season progresses. Is that the expectation for Jamie Robinson, who, like Cha Smith-Wade, was someone who could play in the nickel and also could play safety back in college? We'll see whether that will work out for him this year. But overall, and this is kind of the problem the Panthers have had over the last couple seasons, I expect Bryce to play a major role. Jonathan Mingo, I don't know how many opportunities he's really going to get in this offense when you hear how much Dave Canales wants to run the football, and the fact that they drafted Xavier Leggett and they brought in Deontay Johnson to be the number 1. And he's now being relegated to, I would think, the number 4 wide receiver. In Thielen is back as well. Jatavion Sanders is here. Tommy Trimble, maybe he takes a step forward in the passing game. And what they want to do with Jonathan Brooks in the passing game, I don't see Mingo playing that big of a role this season either. He could, hopefully, but we'll see. And then you look also at DJ Johnson. He should be able to play a significant role just based off of the lack of depth and talent there at the edge rusher spot. I don't expect much out of Chandler Zavala. Really hope we don't see him outside of the preseason. And then Jamie Robinson, hard to know. So we're looking at Bryce being a significant contributor because he's your starting quarterback, and then DJ Johnson being a significant contributor as a rotational piece, and also due to injury and the lack of guys at his position for the time being. So that's 2 out of 5, which that's not bad percentage-wise, of course, but you would want more. You would have hoped that Mingo would have shown more last year and that you would feel confident about him, especially as your 2nd-round pick. And Robinson, if he's just a special teams guy, that's totally fine. Zavala, depth guy, that's totally fine as a 4th-round pick, especially when you bring in other players. As we discussed when revisiting the 2021 draft class last week, the Panthers got to do a better job drafting. This was an 11-man class where there was a ton of misses. This was a 5-man class, and there's only one guy that people really had a lot of hope for, and that's Bryce Young. And I'm sure you had hope for other players that we talked about on today's show. But last year, number 1 pick, your quarterback, having watched the Panthers bring in Sam Darnold and how bad he was, looking at Teddy Bridgewater out there, watching Baker Mayfield, the panic trade up for Matt Corral, who's not even in the league anymore. Your hope was, all right, hopefully this is the guy. And I would hope, as a Panther fan, you're still hoping Bryce Young is the guy. The rest of them, hard to know what to expect from them moving forward, other than Johnson's getting an opportunity. Mingo's going to have to really fight for a role. And then the other 2, we'll see. But a positive is, looking at the 2024 class, Leggett should be starting, should get a ton of snaps and reps and opportunities. Same thing with Jonathan Brooks whenever he's healthy. Jatavion Sanders, Cha Smith-Wade. That's a good step in the right direction for that team, for this team heading into 2024. Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, Dave Canales, the whole operations. We'll even throw David Tepper in there. Got to do a better job scouting, developing, and bringing in the right kind of talent, as we're hoping that the 2023 class is not yet another one we're going to look at in a couple of years' time and wonder, damn, how bad did they get it wrong? All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me over on Twitter to get those questions into me right now. So do that. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, as always. And forever, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.